Hi guys, welcome back. It is Mad Chat, episode number 100. And I'm back again for the third and final time with Mr. Scott Miller. This time we'll be talking about the Max Payne games, Prey. We'll talk a bit about the iPhone and mobile gaming. We'll talk about why Scott thinks the days of the console are numbered and what the future has in store for game designers and publishers. And we'll also talk about living forever and immortality. It's going to really be some interesting stuff for you. So without further ado, here is Mr. Scott Miller.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about another one of my favorite series, the Max Payne games. I played both of those, love those games. I like the characters, great storyline. I'm just wondering, how did this game come about?
We had just finished a project with Remedy, a development team based in Finland. They had just finished a game called Death Rally. And it's funny, Death Rally has just finally been released, I think, re-released and sort of remade on the iPhone and a couple other platforms. But after that game, we were so impressed with their work ethic and just everything about that company. We said, look, let's do a game now where we swing for the fences. Let's do a game where we sort of create a whole new character like we did with Duke Nukem. And basically with Max Payne, the idea was to make a transmedia franchise. Our whole thinking was you start with the character. If you don't have a good character, you've got nothing. So, and if you base your franchise on a character like Duke Nukem, it's just like, it's just like James Bond. If you have a solid character or Batman, you can make games and movies forever based on these characters. So the idea was, let's make a really cool character, and give him do a great backstory for him, give him strong motivation. In this case, his family was killed, and he was like trying to get to the bottom of that, and also give him a really cool gameplay hook. And that was bullet time. So Max Payne had all these really cool elements. No one had ever really seen anything like bullet time in the industry before, and that game was started in 1997. The first one came out in 2001. It was just a huge hit. And then what happened was we sold the IP, the franchise, to our publisher. And then we continued to make number 2. And after that, Remedy decided that they were going to do any more Max Payne games, working with the publisher, because they didn't own the franchise anymore. So they decided they're going to build a whole new franchise, which became Alan Wake. And oddly enough, the publisher who spent almost $50 million on buying Max Payne, they sat on it for years. And I think maybe finally this year or next year we're going to see Max Payne 3 come out. So looking forward to that, I guess. But yeah, it was a fun series of games to make, Max Payne 1 and Max Payne 2. And, eventually also became a movie. So, not a good movie, but it did become a movie. So it kind of fulfilled our transmedia vision for it. But, yeah, the movie was out of our hands, though, so.
What about the 2006 game, Prey? I was just reading about this according to Wikipedia anyway, you can confirm this, I'm sure, but Wikipedia claims it had an 11-year development cycle, which seems like a very long cycle. So I was just wondering about that and just what you think about the game.
11-year development cycle. Well, I guess it was started in 2005 with just a few people working on the engine technology. I think we first demonstrated it at E3 in '98, and then we showed it at E3 in '99. And then we basically canceled the project because we realized that funding 2 teams, because we had Duke Nukem Forever going by that time, and Prey, and we were self-funding both games, so it just wasn't working out for us. We decided, look, we can't self-fund 2 big projects like this. We have to focus on one. What are you doing? So we basically canceled Prey, and nothing happened on that until 2002, when we approached Human Head Studios and said, look, we have this IP sitting here. We've kind of got all this really cool backstory stuff. Do you want to sell this to the publisher and see if we can't, get funding for this and kind of start from scratch and make a game. And Human had loved the idea. Our publisher loved the idea, and so the game sort of got back on track completely from scratch, except for certain elements like the character was in place, some of the story elements were in place. And I think the game came out in 2006. So anyway, what else do you want to know about that project?
Well, it's sort of a related project was Prey Invasion, an iPhone game.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking about that a little bit before, but I was just wondering, maybe not so much about the game, but about the platform. What do you think? So many people are really excited now about the iPhone and the iPad, these sort of mobile devices. Do you think there's a lot of future potential in those?
I definitely think there's tons of potential in those smaller platforms. Now, Prey Invasion, in hindsight, that was probably a mistake because that was when the iPhone was just coming out, and companies like us were like looking around thinking, well, what do we own that we can sort of bring to that platform? And that's not really when a platform like the iPhone is so different than what you've been working with before, you really shouldn't try and bring old games to that platform. You can make money that way, like we made a lot of money bringing Duke 3D to the iPhone. But really, those games are not the best games to bring to it. You want to build original IP just for those platforms, like Words with Friends and Angry Birds and stuff like that. So I love these newer platforms. I think it gives all kinds of new opportunity for new IPs like Angry Birds to be developed very cheaply, and not all of them are going to be great, but some of them are going to become huge IPs in their own right, and it gives and because these games have relatively very low budgets compared to like the big console games for the Xbox and so on. It just gives smaller teams a chance to sort of break into the industry and make a name for themselves, and then kind of go from there. So yeah, I love the Facebook platform, the smartphone platforms, the browser platforms, all these Live, Xbox Live. These are great platforms to introduce new IP that doesn't cost $10 million to make. You can have people working for 6 months off of sweat equity, while they even hold daytime jobs, and make a pretty good game that then becomes something that they can focus on full time after it's released because it becomes a hit.
I don't know if you saw that interview with the Angry Birds developer, but he's predicting that the consoles are going to die, that these new platforms will reign triumphant. Do you agree with that?
I think that the consoles will die, but not soon. I think that we have 2 cycles left. Sort of what I predict is that the next cycle of consoles is really going to test the waters with downloadable games. And I'm talking about, day one AAA games that you'll be able to download. Then I think the generation after that will completely and fully embrace downloadable games, and the retail market like GameStop and those kind of companies, they're going to disappear because no longer will there be a hardware version of games. Games will only be available through download. So that's 2 generations from now. I think we're going to be completely download. And I think after that generation, I think we're not even going to have specific platforms necessarily. I think what we're going to have is TVs. Any display device will basically have what it takes to tap into the cloud, download a game, and the game that you download should be able to run on any platform. In other words, I think 3 generations from now, so this is probably in the 2020s, a developer will be able to make one compile on a game, and it's going to automatically work on any platform and any display device, from a phone, from a tablet to a TV to a PC. It'll recognize what device it's on and configure itself, and you'll be able to have some version of the game experience on that device. And so at that third generation, I don't think you're going to need any sort of set-top specialized boxes anymore. I think it's going to be built into your display device. And there you go.
I'm just trying to think who, out of the publishers and the developers and the gamers, who's going to be the winners and who's going to be the losers if this comes to pass.
Publishers are going to really have to change their model, because no longer will there be a need for distribution like there is, in the retail market. That's going to basically disappear. Publishers instead will become probably financing institutions. They finance the development of projects, but no longer is it a big issue to distribute them. You're going to see a lot more independent distribution of games. You're kind of seeing that now. Companies can independently distribute on, the iPhone, iPads, Xbox Live. No longer do you really need a publisher to do that. And I think that's going to continue to expand. When there's no longer consoles, at some point when TVs can just tap into the cloud and download a game and play it just on the TV itself, the TV will have the hardware built in to run any browser, and then any browser can play any game, 3D or whatever. At some point, the publisher model is going to completely change, and essentially they're just going to become banks, and they're going to fund the big projects, but the smaller projects, developers will be able to fund on their own, and then they can distribute it on all platforms. They will not need a publisher. If you can fund your own project, no longer will you need a publisher. Actually, the one area where publishers may still be necessary is for like marketing and advertising. So that function will probably remain with the publisher, because that can be a costly function. So anyway, but either way, the industry is going to go through a lot of amazing change in the next 10 and 20 years. And I really do think that places like GameStop are on their last legs. They may have at most 10 years left in them.
So the Electronic Arts will be Electronic Arts ad agency.
and bank of some sort, yeah. All
right, well, I think we both have one thing in common. We like to live long enough to live forever. We were talking a bit before about the Immortality Institute. So I was just, very curious about this whole, not sure what the word is for it, of study or prophecy.
Okay, well, you're talking about health now, and sort of, for a couple of years I was the director at the Immortality Institute, one of many directors, and that institute is all about educating people on living healthy, and also promoting the idea that at some point we're going to be able to live forever, and get that word out there. And it's funny that I was showing you this earlier. I can pop it up now, but this is like a very recent issue of Time magazine, which exactly covers this subject. It talks about how in the year 2045, that's the year that man may become immortal, and that's a pretty good estimate on when it's going to happen, because in about 10 to 15 years, we're going to have a mouse that can live 2 or 3 times longer than its normal lifespan. This is inevitable. It's coming. And once that happens, once that proof of concept happens, where we have a mouse that can live 2 or 3 times its lifespan, you're going to see a ton of money go into research to translate that same technology into humans. And within 10 or 20 years of the mouse, we're going to have the same result on a human. And it's not that much further past that where you can have humans that essentially live forever. People get all worried about this, like overpopulation and everything, and all of these obvious questions have been very clearly answered by very smart people, and it's not the issue people think it is, and so on like that. But just like 30 years before, man went to the moon, no one would have believed that man was going to the moon. It was just too far out of an idea. We're about 30 to 40 years from people essentially being able to live forever, but most people that you tell this are not going to believe it. But it is inevitable. It's It's basically a biological engineering problem that can be solved. Most people in the field, there's a lot of researchers in this field, believe it's inevitable. It's coming this century. If not within, people are predicting around 2045, 2050, it's going to happen. So for people like us, our goal should be to live long enough to live forever. Just that's why I live a very healthy life. And I take a lot of supplements. I use hormone therapy and other things to really live a very healthy life. And, most people who are having children nowadays, those children are going to live as long as they want, that's the new future, living hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of years, until man does something crazy like destroys the planet or whatever. But essentially, for most people, death will no longer be something that they have to fear unless it's some sort of tragic accident, of course. But as far as like dying of old age or cancer or heart disease or any sort of brain condition, that's all going to go away in about 50 years or less.
We really have to rethink our retirement policies and Social Security.
Right, yeah. The insurance companies are already probably planning, doing research into this and very worried about, how this is going to change everything. So I'm sure they're staying on top of this research, yeah.
It doesn't really seem too far-fetched for me. It's just... Probably wasn't, I don't know how long ago before the average lifespan was, 30, 40 years, and now it's up to, 85, 86, something like this. So. Yeah,
it's weird that as far as countries go, modern countries go, the United States ranks like number 40 in terms of longevity. It's because we eat so much crap in the United States, fast food and too much sugar and too many grains. And so, it's weird, but humans are not meant to eat grains, and yet most health authorities will tell you to eat lots of whole grains, and there's not any mammal on Earth that doesn't get fat from eating grains. So that's one thing I don't ever eat is grains. And it's all a very interesting subject. There's books out there that talk about this, and anyone can look it up. It's interesting stuff. But like I said, that issue of Time magazine I pointed out has like a 10-page article that really goes into a lot of depth about this subject, and it's probably a good first stepping stone to sort of learn about the reality of this.
Well, Scott, what are you having for dinner tonight?
For real? I gotta know. Probably a big steak.
All right, well, thank you very much. It's been a real pleasure talking to you and an honor.
Oh, well, thank you, Matt. Same here. And anytime.
And that's all for this week's episode. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I want to thank everybody who has been donating, contributing, and commenting on this show. It's really given me the pep and the desire to make more episodes, so definitely keep those coming in. Should be back next week with Jeff Williams. Now, he is the designer and pretty much one-man band behind the game Dark Star, the interactive movie. Now, it's a brilliant game, and he's a really brilliant guy. Definitely off-the-wall interview. I know you're going to really love this interview. It's really good stuff. Really a good, interesting take on the industry and game, a lot of other things. So stay tuned for that. Now, the toast this week comes from Rasmus Fishbailey. That's about as Fishbailey. Okay, Rasmus, I tried so hard to get this right. I listened to your recording about 100 times. He actually recorded his name for me. And, that's about the best I can do. I just suck at that, at pronunciations, but I tried my best. But it probably hasn't helped that I've been sampling the beer that he wanted me to try. Nils Oskar Coffee Stout, brewed in Sweden, of course, in a place called Nyköping, Sweden. Again, I'm pretty sure I butchered that. But I took the liberty, as I said, of filling the old drinking horn with it, and the horn was very happy to be the recipient of this brew. So let's give this a try here.
Much better.
Wow, that is some damn good brew, and it's also very strong. No wonder you Swedish guys are so manly, drinking beer this strong. Holy cow. Okay, let's see if I can finish this. I've got a quotation from a Confederate officer by the name of Albert Pike, and it goes something like this. What you do for yourself alone, dies with you. What you do for others and the world remains and is immortal. Good thought there from a somewhat questionable source, I suppose, but it is the anniversary of the Civil War here in the United States. So anyway, I'm going to get back to this brew. So see you guys next week.
Get back to work, you slacker.